Hello, friends. Welcome, welcome. And for us in the UK, it's a bank holiday Monday. First of all, massive thanks to Jennifer for sending me today's background image. While we do our hellos, that's probably the best way to go. What am I sat in front of? Put that in the comments and we'll see who gets it right. Let's start with some hellos. Happy Monday, all. Bank holiday for us here in the UK. If you're in the UK, have you had a nice bank holiday? It's been wet and rainy. It was lovely over the weekend, and we had high hopes of some outdoor play for our child. Those were swiftly transferred to a soft play because we needed to run him so that he would sleep. So we've done that today. Hi, Deborah. Thank you for joining. Hello, Steve. Hello, Shane. Yes, May Day. That is exactly what it is. May Day bank holiday. I don't know, is it, who else has it as a bank holiday? Is it a universal bank holiday or is it just in the UK? Hi, Marianne. Thank you for joining. Medusa Snudpuckle. Hello, hello. And you say you are experiencing high winds. That sounds ominous. I hope it's all okay where you are. And good afternoon, Rena. It is 8:30 of the evening here. Welcome indeed to this. And Manda, we will be getting to that. I believe, clashing with the Met Gala. I've got a small update on the Met Gala, and no doubt we will have things to discuss about outfits, etc. next time. So, indeed. Hello. Very early Australian morning. And I've seen, Shane, you have got the location correct. First one that I've seen in the chat. Indeed, in front of Edinburgh Castle. Edinburgh does hold a special place in my heart. I spent a number of Augusts in Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival, where I messed about, did some stage things, and had a lovely time up and down the Royal Mile, shouting my little heart out, selling the various shows I was involved in. So we indeed, makeup and monarchies. The Met Gala theme is Sleeping Beauties. So we will investigate. People checking in with, so it's a bank holiday in Ireland, Shane tells us. Ocean Mist, it's not a bank holiday in the US. And Marianne says it's not a bank holiday in Canada either. So Deborah's showing off that she's had a lovely day in California. Well, what is that sunshine and vitamin D like, eh? not having rickets. Well done. Good times. So let us welcome, friends. Thank you to everybody who's joining this live. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you also if you are watching on the playback. We have got some updates, some repatriation / decolonization news. We've got some new news. We've got, I believe, 3 ding-dongs, all of which are thefts. And we have, alas, a paucity of events and exhibitions, just the 2. I'm still having trouble with the Opera Pinboard. The Opera Pinboard has not been friendly. However, the description box has been updated. So the articles I'm talking about are listed and numbered in the description box, and that will correspond to the numbers that you will see on the bottom of the slides that I'll be putting on screen in a moment. I've got lots of people to thank for sending me articles, and I will be doing that imminently. Before that I do so, hello, Lizzie. Steve, you have booked your travel to London to see the Legion exhibition at the British Museum. I do hope that you have a good time. And apart from some snafus on social media, people have had lots of positive things to say about the exhibition. So I hope you have a wonderful time and that you get to do some other cool and exciting stuff in London while you're down. And Madeline, thank you ever so much for the super chat. That's very kind and very generous of you. Thank you. And now on to my other thank yous for people sending me lots of articles this month. Thank you to Jenna, to Jessie, to Natalie, Yvonne, to Dani, Shane, to my name twin cat, to Daniella, Elverta, Kathy, Alicia, Elaine, Melanie, Amy, Beth, to Janet, Kate, Sarah, Joseph, Mara, to Mr. Dr. Cat with a stray comma after it there, and also to Pandora Snudpuckle. Thank you ever so much for taking the time to send me those articles. I am very grateful. And so, Catherine's hopped up saying that you have got federal holidays on Monday in the US. So is that next Monday or this Monday? Well, if you're enjoying a holiday, I hope you're having a lovely one. Lovely one. It's not today, but you have got federal holidays on. We tend to have our bank holidays always on a Monday, I believe. And we've got another one in May, end of May. Not quite sure why. Can't remember. But this is the May Day bank holiday. So there we go. Updates first. We have an update about that sneaky picture that came into the German gallery. This is the picture, you can see it there, that made me go, it's not good. I mean, look, everyone's got their own taste. I get it. So, some updates on it. This was apparently the first picture that people found when they came into the first floor exhibition space at this particular Munich gallery. And this is, as we said last time, a 60 centimeter by 120 centimeter artwork that it looks like a family of four and apparently if you look at it, it's the image that you've got of the cardigans and the outfits of the children. Those are retro photographs, but everything else has been attacked with Tipex, or I think you might call it whiteout in other places. And this is apparently the creation of a 51-year-old technical worker employed by the museum who snuck it into the show. We knew lots of these things already. I wasn't quite sure that it was the first thing that people saw. So at first, the museum downplayed it, calling it a little hoax, a trifling matter. But museum insiders say that far from this being a brazen shot at fame, the artwork was spent as a critical intervention by one of the people who helped to make exhibitions happen, but who usually remain invisible, designed to provoke debate about elitism in the art world. Early reports, which failed to mention that this special exhibition in which the picture was hung was all about errors and malfunctions in art. It was called Glitch, on the art of interference. Wow, that puts it into some additional context, I think. The catalogue said that the aim was to uncover normative orders and socio-political disparities and to make visible what is invisible. The curator of the exhibition said developing the show had taught her to accept imperfections and accidents. Who is to determine what is perfect? When dealing with mishaps, it's quite possible to show a degree of serenity. We are told that so far the technician artist has not been named, nor have they publicly commented on this affair. And the decision has been made by the museum not to name them because they don't want to encourage copycat pranksters. The museum said that they reject the idea this is an artistic intervention because, quote, no hurdles had been overcome. It was merely a breach of trust. Well, I suppose that all very much depends on what you see as particular hurdles, doesn't it? The quote from the museum, employees must comply with security concepts and not jeopardize valuable cultural heritage. Apparently, curators of an exhibition in Bonn last year took a very different approach. When taking down a temporary exhibition entitled Who We Are, reflecting a country of immigration, they were surprised to find an extra painting on their hands. So they put out a message on social media saying, quote, we think this is funny and would like to know the artist, so get in touch. There will be no trouble. Word of honor. The artist, Dani Emanuelides, came forward and her painting went on to fetch €3,696 at auction in Cologne. Thank you so much for the super chat, Becky. That's very kind of you. I think this is interesting. And it was also interesting that in the first article, it didn't go into details about what this exhibition is and the conversation it was supposed to be provoking. I do think that this has far greater depth of meaning as a choice, knowing that, but I'm interested to know what you think about that. What do we think? Wheezy points out they didn't take anything, they added something. The complaint is they put holes in the wall, but that is presumably in part their job, because they are a technician who is tasked with putting together exhibitions. So I am interested to know your thoughts on it. I think, knowing the title of the exhibition, I approve this far more than I think I probably did in the first case. I think that this is actually very interesting conversation to be having, personally. Anyway, on we go. The lost Gustav Klimt painting. This is thought to depict a daughter of either Adolf or Justus Laser, has sold at auction, we're told here, for 30 million euros. This painting was believed lost for the past century, and it has been sold at an auction in Vienna. The unfinished work goes with the title Portrait of Fraulein Alicia, and it fetched, as we said, 30 million euros, 26 million pounds, or $32 million. It was commissioned by a family of Jewish industrialists in 1917, which is a year prior to Klimt's death. There are, however, unanswered questions about the painting. We don't know who the woman in the portrait is, for example. We also don't know what happened to it during the Nazi occupation period. Art historians Tobias Natter and Alfred Weidinger said the painting is of Margarete Constant Leiser, the daughter of Adolf Leiser. But the Imkinski house in Vienna, which auctioned the work, thinks that it could also depict one of the two daughters of Justus Lesser and his wife Henriette. So the auction house said in a statement that the exact fate of the painting after 1925 was unclear, but it was, however, acquired by a legal predecessor of the consigner in the 1960s and went to the current owner through 3 successive inheritances. The current Austrian owner's identity has, however, not been made public. Ernest Poyle from the auction house in Kinski told the BBC that they have an agreement, according to the Washington Principles, with the whole family, these legal successors of the Leisers. The Imkinski catalogue described the agreement as a, quote, fair and just solution. However, Erika Jakubowicz, who is the executive director of the presidency of the Austrian Jewish community, said there were still, quote, many unanswered questions, and has asked this case to be researched by an independent party. As she points out, art restitution is a very sensitive issue. All research must be carried out accurately and in detail, and the result must be comprehensible and transparent. It must also be ensured that there is a state-of-the-art procedure for future private restitutions. We are also informed that Klimt's art has fetched enormous sums at auction in the past. Back in 2023, Lady with a Fan sold for £85.3 million at Sotheby's, meaning it was the most valuable work of art ever sold at auction in Europe. So if that investigation takes place, I will, of course, update you of any findings. And we are on to the Met Gala information. So it's Met Gala Monday. And as we know, this is an annual event held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. There have been some very, very famous moments of fashion and fashion history that have both been displayed, but also that have occurred through this red carpet outside the show. Maybe it's not always red as well. I remember various things. Certainly a few outfits that Rihanna has worn. Obviously, here we've got Zendaya in the Cinderella dress. And this year, the topic theme is Sleeping Beauties. And what does that mean? Well, the Sleeping Beauties, it's Sleeping Beauties, reawakening fashion. This is to correspond with an accompanying exhibit at the Costume Institute. Yes, Blake Lively also. That was a phenomenal outfit. Just, I can't remember what the theme was for that one. Just effortlessly beautiful and classy. I thought it was there. That was really, it was a dress that could be almost worn and as a standout piece at so many different places. It wasn't just a one-off costume piece. It was something truly spectacular. So this is not inspired, which is the way I went, by Disney princesses, although I think there will be some who go down that route. Rather, it's referring to treasured garments in the museum's collection that are so fragile they need to be housed in special glass coffins rather than on mannequins. These garments are displayed in a series of galleries that are organised by themes of nature. So I am I'm very much looking forward to seeing how these pictures, what we start seeing coming out, because somehow my invitation to the event got lost in the post. Weird. The coverage begins at 6 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know what that means. Has it started? If somebody knows what time that is, has that 11 p.m. my time. Thank you, Liz. 11 p.m. my time. So that means I'm not clashing with the Met Gala. Very, very good. Maybe that's why I have 92 of you watching, because I'm not currently clashing with the Met Gala. I'm going to try and watch a bit of that, I think, before sleep attacks me fully in the face, because having a 3-year-old is hard. Steve, the oldest item of clothing you have seen is in the Petrie Museum in London. I am not familiar. I'm going to have to look into that. That sounds cool. So Amanda says the exhibit is Sleeping Beauties. The theme for the gala is Garden of Time. Oh, interesting. Okay. So, Madeline, on the topic of the person who put the piece of art up, as a jobbing artist myself, I fully approve of the stunt that the artist pulled. More power to them, in my opinion. It's one of these things, isn't it? It's who decides what is valuable art? Ultimately, the market. What makes art valuable? Perhaps the aesthetics, or perhaps the understanding that this name, this age, this technique somehow requires a price tag of 5, 6, 7 digits. Is it have more labor hours of work, more labor hours of training gone into the creation of that piece? Has more talent gone into the creation of that piece than something that you could potentially pick up off a market stall for £30? Has more labor gone into it? All of those things, not necessarily. So I think it's very interesting as to what makes art and what makes value. Jessie makes a great point. Value is based on what someone will pay. But with regards to arts, private sales are a great way to launder money. They certainly are. And then you get the throw in of forgeries and prints. And what have we stopped with that thing? Oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called now. Where you buy a digital version of a print, but you don't own the art, but you have what was that called? that everyone went wild for straight after lockdown. And it's giving now, what is that called? NFTs. NFTs. Oh, are people still doing NFTs? Are people still doing those? Or was that like the tulip crisis, the South Sea bubble? Because YouTubers were spending many zeros of that. Yes, an NFT is a non-fungible token. Column, I have no idea what that could possibly actually refer to. Is anybody doing that anymore? So Steve said the oldest piece of fashion that he saw at that exhibition, the Tarkan dress. I have not heard of this. I'm going to look it up. Thank you for the tip. That's fabulous. So yes, the NFT thing. This NFTs. What a second. Hang on a second. Louis Vuitton is doing a version of their jackets as an NFT. Look, maybe I am a neophyte, or I live in history too much, or I just like physical things. I don't get it. I tried to get it. I don't get it. It feels like the South Sea. It feels like you are throwing money into something that doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Liz, how does it even work? I don't know. I tried to understand because everyone was talking about them, and there was loads of stuff about museums putting out NFTs of their items. I didn't understand it then, and I won't understand it. I won't. Michelle, it's nothing to get. It's like Bitcoin, but I understand Bitcoin because Bitcoin, to my mind, works in the same way as most, if not all, modern currencies, in that a coin or a note has the value ascribed to it because we have decided to ascribe to it. The face value of the item within the coin doesn't equate, it's not the equivalent of what's on the actual thing. Used to be a pound would be a physical pound of silver. I get that. We have gone, this thing is now the equivalent. It's a token that means that this pound is the same as a pound of silver or gold or whatever. I understand that concept. Bitcoin is an imaginative digital version of an alloyed coin or a bit of kind of whatever we now make our currency out of. I get that, but I don't get NFTs. Maybe I should. Emma says that actually NFTs are a good way to wash money. Yeah. I mean, Wheezy, I think that Bitcoin could well be a pyramid or a Ponzi scheme because it is reliant on a community agreeing that something has the value it has. But then by the same logic, currency is only as good as the gold standard, sterling or whatever, isn't it? Thank you so much, Rena. That's very, very kind of you and very, very generous. Thank you. Why invest in something you don't get anything from? Well, that, Laurie, could be said about a lot of things, and indeed people. But that's a rant for another Wednesday. Michelle, the reason you're confused is you're smart, doesn't really make actual sense. It's very kind of you to say that. I'm sure that somebody who is in this, but I'm just also, for me, this feels adjacent to gambling, and I was very much raised. My grandfather was ardent in that you never gamble. Essentially, if you are going to gamble anything, if you would not be prepared to take that money out of your pocket and throw it down a drain, do not gamble it. So all of this stuff, in the same way, like I know people playing stocks and shares can make a fortune, but it feels like gambling to me. So Aurora Rose asks, how many Snudpuckles do we have on here? Are you all related? Or are you like a drag house? Are you the house of Snudpuckle? In which case, spectacular. make up monarchies. It feels like that because it is gambling. I mean, yeah. Anywho's. That's my personal experience of the way I was raised. You know, I've never gambled. My dad pays the lottery mostly because he likes the National Lottery, gives money to charity. I think also he likes sometimes his numbers come up. Actually, quite frequently his numbers come up, and he tends to get his money back. But he has a nice term doing it. It's very much a fun thing for him to do. I don't gamble, but equally I don't drink either. I'm such a fun sponge. Such a fun sponge. Okay, so on to our next update, pals. This is about that charred scroll that we saw, that they were doing all sorts of doohickeys to technically sciencey doohickeys. Things like, this is from the University of Pisa, infrared and ultraviolet optical imaging, thermal imaging, tomography, and AI. So as I said, the appropriate term for that collection of objects, in my mind, is doohickeys. Doohickeys. This is a piece of charred papyrus that was recovered from Herculaneum, another Roman town destroyed by the eruption of Vesuvius in AD 79. And these fragments belong to a scroll containing a work called, quote, The History of the Academy by the Epicurean philosopher Philodemus of Gadara, who lived, we're told, from about 110 to 30 BCE. In the work, the life of Plato, the Greek philosopher, is detailed. And in this work, it includes the fact that Plato had been buried in a private garden reserved for the Platonic school of the Academy in Athens, near a small shrine sacred to the Muses. Prior to this discovery, it had only been known that Plato had been buried in the Academy. So now we theoretically have a knowledge about where Plato is buried. So this is very exciting. And there is a linked article to read more about the charred scrolls of Herculaneum. So do go check that out if you want more information. Another update from a previous ding dong: 2 men have now been charged with cutting down the famous tree that was in Hadrian's Wall. So this is the sycamore tree, also known as the Sycamore Gap tree. The charged individuals are one Daniel Graham, 38, and one Adam Carruthers, 31. They have been charged with causing criminal damage and also damaging the wall, Hadrian's Wall, built in AD 122. They will be appearing at Newcastle Magistrates Court on the 15th of May. So in 9 days from now. The Northumbrian Police Superintendent Kevin Waring has called it an incredibly sad day when this discovery was made about this vandalism. Alison Hawkins said that it's an iconic picture that everyone wants to see. You can forgive nature for doing it, but you can't forgive that. I don't believe as of yet we know of a motive as to why they have done this. They were arrested in October and released on bail. It's taken 6 months to bring these charges. Detective Chief Inspector Rebecca Fenney said that she recognised, quote, the strength of feeling in the local community and further afield, but cautioned people against speculation or comment that could affect the criminal case. The National Trust, who own the land or look after the land on where Sycamore Gap tree stood, said it's going to take at least 3 years, up to 3 years, to see if new growth sprouts from the stump of this tree. They did remove the tree, and they were hopeful that a third of the seeds and cuttings it collected could be later planted. So I'm not going to speculate as to why they have done this. There has previously been speculation about what might have motivated this act of clear vandalism. And I'm assuming that following the court case, we may get I assume that if it does go fully to court and they continue to plead not guilty, then what we're going to see is a prosecution who will be making a case pointing out why they have done this as part of the reason for prosecuting them and presumably throwing the book at them. So we shall see what they're going to be, what the claims are going to be. Probably once the case is over and done with, and as and when it is. I don't know how many days it's going to be, but it may well be, as this is going to be in 9 days, it is possible that we may have some further information by the time that we next meet for another update. If not, I assume we will by the one after that. The Stone of Destiny, also known as the Stone of Scone, has connections to Scottish royalty dating back nearly 1,000 years. The origins are shrouded in mystery. It's sometimes referred to in England as the Coronation Stone. It was stolen from Scotland by Edward I, the Hammer of the Scots, who then placed it beneath the throne of coronation. It has recently gone from Edinburgh Castle to Perth Museum, and there's an exhibition that we talked about previously of this, and there's been an analysis made of it. And they think that the wear that's been found on top of this artifact would have been caused by footsteps prior to it being used as the crowning stone of Scotland's monarchs at Scone, which is near Perth, in medieval times. The coronation of Alexander III in 1249 is the first known instance of this stone being used for coronation. This stone did leave Scotland last year for the coronation of King Charles III. There was analysis carried out in preparation for it to be transported to Westminster Abbey, and they determined that this stone was quarried in the Scone area, suggesting that it might have been used in a nearby church or possibly in a Roman building. One of the legends is that the stone was Jacob's pillow, the stone on which Jacob laid his head when he dreamt about the ladder to heaven. Dr. Nicky Scott, who is a senior cultural significance advisor at the Historic Environment Scotland, said, quote, "While we know some inauguration rituals did involve the individual being inaugurated to step on the stone, such at Dunnard Hillfort, the level of wear on the Stone of Destiny doesn't support such use. Even several hundred years of such a ritual would not create the level of wear we see. It's more likely that the stone had earlier served as a step, although we don't know the context for this." Professor David Brown, Chair of Scottish History at the University of Glasgow, said the evidence is quite compelling. It means that at some point the stone was repurposed as an inaugural throne. For the first time in 7 centuries, the stone has been returned to its ancestral home in Perth following the coronation of Charles III, and so it's now not gone back to Edinburgh. It's now in the Perth Museum. So, very interesting. So those are the updates that I have. What have we got? What are we saying? Scarlet, nice of English to try and rob it of its Scottishness by rather giving it the rather naff name, the Stone of Destiny. I'll be honest, I don't know who gave it that name, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was us. Would not surprise me. It could be, but of course, it's entirely possible that it was a step into a space that was seen as being very significant and connected to monarchy. It could be a very important threshold stone in some palace or tomb or temple that fell into disrepair, or that the stone was taken because of its importance as a threshold stone to become a stone of inauguration. I'm interested by that. Lizzie B, did the king send it to Perth or was it Scotland who decided that? I don't know. I would assume that it would be the heritage bodies of Scotland that made that choice to send it to the Perth Museum, principally because while a number of these museums or museum governing bodies may have royal assent or may look after royal property, my understanding is that the actual monarch is fairly hands-off. So, for example, the Royal Collection Trust has paintings, some of which are in palaces and castles that members of the royal family live in. However, because they are part of the Royal Collection Trust, they aren't things that the monarch themselves can dispose of or sell on. They belong to the crown, the nation. Equally, there is, for example, the Tower of London, Kensington Palace, and of course there's the Kensington Palace press team that look after a lot of the Wales's communication, but there's also Kensington Palace that's part of the same body as the Tower of London, Hampton Court Palace, Kew Palace, Hillsborough, maybe that's it. They are historic royal palaces. That's a separate charity. So, for example, there was some talk on social media about a Kensington Palace exhibition on hidden lives. And a lot of commentators had said that this is the royal family, Kensington Palace, the Prince and Princess of Wales, talking about servants in some kind of attempt to get PR, when actually it's not that Kensington Palace, it's next door Kensington Palace. So it's quite confusing. I understand that. But yes, it could nominally be his decision, but it wouldn't have been a decision made by him, I would imagine. That was a rather long way of saying that. Teresa, thank you ever so much. That's incredibly generous of you. Thank you. Thank you. Make Monarchies. Currently doing episodes on her channel about the First War of Scottish Independence. Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I will check that out. I didn't know you had a channel. Thank you very much. So let us go on to our repatriations now. A stolen Ramesses II sculpture has been returned to Egypt. This is a fragment of a sculpture of Ramesses II that is stolen some 30 years ago, has been handed over to Egyptian authorities by Swiss officials. This is a 3,400-year-old carving showing the pharaoh's face, taken from Ramesses II's temple in Abydos. This sculpture originally featured Ramesses II with a group of deities, and it was recovered in Geneva during criminal proceedings. If you want to know more, there is about Ramesses, then you can go to the linked article that's in the linked article on number 7 and go to Ram Heads for Ramesses. Next up is a repatriation, but I believe also an update. I think we have talked about this previously. The Art Institute of Chicago has contended that decades of investigation and litigation have concluded that a watercolor it now holds was never stolen by the Nazis from a cabaret performer who later died in a concentration camp, or rather who was later murdered in a concentration camp, but was legally sold by the man's heirs. There's a court filing. The Art Institute has argued that the allegations of New York prosecutors are that this institute was holding stolen artwork are in fact groundless. Prosecutors have accused this institute of exhibiting, quote, willful blindness when it bought the piece in 1966. This has allowed them to. They wish to evidence that the work was in fact looted by Nazis from the cabaret star Fritz Grombaum before the start of World War II. The museum has defended its ownership, saying that the district attorney's theory is factually unsupported and wrong. The core allegations raised by the people, namely that Grandbaum-Shelley collection, including Russian war prisoner, which is this one, was looted by the Nazis during World War II, have been the subject of extensive civil litigation over decades and government investigation in this country and abroad, which has generally reached the opposite conclusion, that Russian war prisoner was not looted during World War II, but was instead lawfully sold by surviving families members after World War II. Grandbaum's heirs have for years sought the return of Russian war prisoner, and other pieces of his collection from museum. In the February filing, the New York prosecutors addressed that argument at length, outlining a conspiracy of silence in which Cornfield and other dealers laundered artwork stolen by Nazis. It accused Cornfield of doctoring documents to hide the scheme, including purported correspondence between him and Lukács. The Art Institute's motion counters there's no evidence to support the claim of conspiracy, but there is direct evidence that Lukács sold Russian war prisoner to Cornfield. Grunbaum's wife, Elizabeth, was forced to register her and her husband's assets, including his art collection, in 1938, under Nazi law after Grunbaum was arrested. In September that year, the collection landed in the storage of Schneckler & Co. at a warehouse in Vienna. This was an Austrian freight forwarding and shipping company. Multiple high-ranking Nazi officials were on this firm's board. It was essentially a Nazi-controlled company. Prosecutors alleged that Nazis sold items from the storage facility to fund the war effort. While the Art Institute's motion says there's no reliable evidence to prove the Russian war prisoner was ever in that warehouse, it suggests it's plausible that Elizabeth managed to transfer some of her and Fritz's possessions, including artworks, to Lukács and her other family members. The Art Institute concedes that Schneckler was affiliated with the Nazis, but also provided lawful storage and moving services across Europe. The motion points out that Elizabeth's sisters used the same moving company when they fled Vienna in 1938. As such, it does not follow, and there is no evidence to support the conclusion that Elizabeth's decision to put the family possessions into storage in September 1938 amounted to a Nazi seizure of the same. The court document goes on, there is no evidence Russian war prisoner was ever physically seized or looted by Nazis. The motion also defended Cornfield's credibility, stating that the discrepancies in his supporting documents were either illusory or immaterial. The Director of Public Affairs of the Art Institute said, the evidence clearly demonstrates that this work was never looted and was legally acquired, and we will continue to advocate for our lawful ownership of this work. Well, we will see how that all plays out, and I'm sure at some point there will be an update on whether or not the court rules in their favour or indeed in the other person's favour. Weezy says, the defence, not all of our activities were criminal. I mean, fair. Equally, just because some things were looted, it doesn't mean this was. We will see. I mean, I have my suspicions, but they feel bold. The Art Institute feels bold. We'll see if they can best the prosecutors. Meanwhile, Denver Art Museum has denied repatriation requests from Native Alaskan tribes. This is from two federally recognized Native Alaskan tribes. These claims or calls for repatriation have been denied despite the submission of 3 formal claims and numerous delegation visits. There's a report in the Denver Post earlier this month that detailed the different barriers for Indigenous and Native groups to recover funerary objects and ancestral remains that were held by museums and prestigious universities. This is going on despite the passing of NAGPRA. I believe that's how you pronounce it, NAGPRA. They have control of these objects and they can make it as easy or difficult as they want. So In 2017, a dozen tribal members from the Tlingit and Haida Indian tribes of Alaska met with museum officials over a 14-foot wide wooden house partition of a raven, which showing the community how to fish. The delegation said these 170-year-old painted panels should be returned under a federal law that was passed in 1990. This is NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. There were 3 days of meetings. The tribal representatives left the museum with a feeling that the institution would do everything in its power to avoid returning these items. The curator of native arts at DAM, the Denver Art Museum, attended these meetings in 2017 and disputed that museums officials were intransigent, condescending, and insensitive in consultations. Well, what I'm going to say to you is that intention and reception are different things, John, and if that's how it was received, then that is important to denote, and let's not gaslight people into saying, I'm sorry you felt that way. Anywho, John went on to say to the Denver Post that the representatives never submitted a formal claim under NAGPRA for the Raven Scream. Apparently, the museum offered to help the tribe with the paperwork required for repatriation requests. He said, we're not in the business of just giving away our collections. Nobody is. Interesting that you're calling them your collections. Good. The report said DAM rejected 3 claims from the Tlingit tribe for a beaver clan hat, a bear shirt, and tunic on the basis of not having enough information. Chip Colwell, a former curator of DAM, the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, told the Denver Post that DAM had a reputation in the museum community for its lack of progress in this regard. The author of the book, Plundered Skulls and Stolen Strip. Sorry, I'm going to say that again because it's a very interesting book. Chip Colwell is the author of the book, Plundered Skulls and Stolen Spirits, Inside the Fight to Reclaim Native America's Culture. Sounds very interesting. Colwell notes that in that book, tribes might not both submit a formal claim for repatriation if they feel an institution has disregarded initial discussions. Colwell said museums are in the business of returning things. It's this retentionist mentality that led to the predicament we're in and to NAGPRA itself. The Denver Post also noticed DAM's response to repatriation claims is markedly different from other institutions which have received repatriation requests from Native Alaskan tribes. This includes the Burke Museum, the Portland Art Museum, the University of Maine's Hudson Museum, and the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. Apparently, DAM also did not respond to a press request from Art News. So let's see how that goes. As a Londoner, there is a part of me that is relieved. It's not just the British Museum that is like, la, 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 I'm going to ignore a global conversation that's going on. La, 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 my collection. Stop being a... Sharing is caring, as my toddler, little over a toddler, tells me. Mummy, sharing is caring. Usually he wants a bit of my chocolate. Share, mummy, share. Sharing is caring. How can you not? Finders keepers, defense, yes. Except it's not though, is it? It's finders keepers, looters stealers, everybody else, weepers. I mean, is my response. Again, I'm just quoting my 3-year-old tonight. Sharing is caring. Oh, Medusa says the DAM have got a ton of stuff in storage. You are a member, as do all of these. It's, do you know what the weird thing is to me? It's the museums that are like, this is our stuff. They have got on-site and off-site the amount of money that they are wasting, in my mind, warehousing this stuff to avoid giving it back to people who have asked for it, who want it. Some of it's not even on display. Lots of it's not even on display because they've not got space on the walls or on the floor or on the plinths for it, but they can't possibly give it back. Julesy, surely the museum has other objects in storage they could display instead of stolen Native American artifacts. Yes, they all do. They all do. Oh, the rage. Aurora, talking about my child, does he share his chocolate with you? No. When it comes to chocolate, there is a one-way direction of share. Although I will say he will share his Pom Bears and his mini cheddars with me. He will do that. Frankly, I don't really want to share his chocolate with him. I will be honest, because he feels that it needs to be fully experienced as a full sensory experience. He wants to touch it to the point that it's almost liquid. He wants to smell it because it's all over his face. He wants to make sure he can really see it because it's right up there by his eyes. And he's also going to taste it. I think he might be listening to it sometimes just because it gets to the ear as well. So I don't really want to share whatever that mush that kind of caramel and biscuit sometimes that is smushed into the palm of his sweaty little hand. I don't want to share it. So he's good. He's good to not share. Cindy, thank you so much for the super sticker. That's very, very, very kind of you. Thank you. Very generous. Lisa, with our daughter, we called it Feely Cookie because she felt her food till it was crumbs or mush. Because frankly, sometimes using your teeth is just too much work. You've got to go digital. You have to smush it right up. It is Santa Cruz Silent. It is a full chocolate experience. It may even be tapping into his sixth sense. It might be taking him into the future. As we've already talked about, he does sometimes, or the past, in fact, like when he says those creepy things to me, Mummy, before when I was older, which just makes me want to unzip my skin and climb out. Mummy, before when I was older. Haunted Victorian ghost child. I don't like it. Julesy, I'm picturing the little hands opening and closing, all the cookie mush inside. Yes, but also they want to touch your face with it, don't they? It's that moment where they're just covered in schmutz. And at that point, he's like, Mummy, have you got a plait? And every cell of your body goes, I have got a plait. And I really would prefer for that plait to not be pebbled out. Please. Please. Oh, kids are a joy, aren't they? Joy. Next repatriation news. Oh, Ellen, thank you for coming in. You're a Denver resident, upset about how your art museum has handled the Native Alaskan repatriation request. Ellen, I totally get that level of upset and disappointment. And it's, for me, it's the same when I hear about London museums or indeed UK museums behaving that way. It's like a grief. You're confused, annoyed, really disappointed, particularly when it's museums that you have patronized, that you have recommended to people. You just think, in good conscience, and this is the question that I want to ask. In good conscience, when museums have proven to be intransigent when it comes to this stuff, should I be recommending exhibitions within them? I don't It's a question that I'm asking myself. I don't know. Is it something, along with talking about, for example, accessibility? I go and research their accessibility. Should I also be talking about, when I'm recommending in events and exhibitions, should I also be talking about any possible repatriation scandal? Because obviously I recommend exhibitions for the British Museum and countless other museums, and I don't know. I know with the British Museum that their repatriation policy is, but I don't know about other museums. Is that something that I should be researching and sharing when I share these exhibitions? Catherine says that children talking about before. My son told me about when he could fly and he was dead serious, age 3. Was he a bird? Or a Wright brother? Oh, that's good. Medusa Snudpuckle, I'm going to send the museum an email to process. I mean, that's the other thing is I've had a really interesting meeting with a very cool institution over here in the UK, and in that meeting were other creatives, historians, decolonizers, and it's it's an ongoing conversation that's hopefully building towards an event that's going to look at questions of repatriation, decolonization, and ethical frameworks. So as and when I can tell you more about that, I will be absolutely sharing that big style, because I hope that it's going to, I don't think that we're going to answer the questions, but I think we're going to pose some very interesting ones and start hopefully a very interesting conversation that might in years to come lead to some answers. Meanwhile, the MFA, I believe the Museum of Fine Arts of Boston, has returned an ancient Egyptian child's coffin to a Swedish museum it disappeared from decades ago. I feel like Boston to Sweden, Egyptian child's coffin, question mark. But let's see what they've got to say. This is a small ornate clay coffin or sarcophagus created for an Egyptian boy who died more than 3,000 years ago. Apparently, this object had been stolen from the Swedish institution. Provenance research done by MFA Boston revealed the documents provided when it acquired the objects in 1985, including paperwork that it suggested it had been excavated by the Swedish artist Eric Stoll in 1937, were inauthentic. The coffin was actually excavated by the British School of Archaeology in Egypt from a site at Gorob in 1920. 2 years later, as findings from the excavations were divided up by Western institutions, it was sent to the Victoria Museum of Egyptian Antiquities, as this Swedish museum, now known as the Gustavianum, was then known. At some point between then and 1970, it went missing. The senior curator of provenance of the MFA said, in this case, we were fortunate enough to have an excavation photograph showing where and when the coffin was found, so that we could begin to correct the record. Anytime we deaccession and restitute a work of art from a museum, it serves as a good reminder that we need to exercise as much diligence as possible as we build the collection. The child sarcophagus is an important item in our collections, and it means a lot to the museum and the university that it has been returned to us. This is the Swedish Museum spokesperson. The sarcophagus is an excellent complement to our Egyptian collections and will now be available for research. The coffin dates from Egypt's 19th dynasty. It's richly painted with figures and hieroglyphs. It was made for a boy named Paniphanerb. It's around 43 inches or 110 centimeters long. It's designed so that the head and chest areas form a lid that can be removed to place the body inside. The circumstances surrounding the object's disappearance from the museum and its trafficking into the US remain unknown. I feel like there's a further repatriation that should potentially happen. But mayhap that's a question for another day. When it said it, ancient Egyptian child's coffin to Swedish museum, I went, my brain went, record scratch. I mean, allegedly, Jackie, I would say allegedly that's kind of how I. And for me as well, the speed with which the MFA went, oh, sorry, Sweden, turns out this is yours. This Egyptian artifact, actually yours. We must give it back to you. One has to wonder, there's a part of me that wonders, if MFA Boston knows that these are going to be part of repatriation requests from an older claimant, namely Egypt, and they don't want the headache of having to acknowledge that original looting because it might call into question some of their other stuff. So they're actually kicking the can to this Swedish institution because it's much easier to go, this has been stolen from them, rather than acknowledging that all of that excavation work, probably those items should have remained in country. I wonder if the speed with which this repatriation happened is about something else. But maybe I'm just a cynic. I am definitely a cynic. Jackie follows up. Maybe they have other strong inter-university relationships with them they have to maintain. Maybe. Yeah. Rena, it's I think that this for Boston, this is a far less I think this is a far less complicated transition than the monolithic discussion about Egyptian artifacts, because it's not just the other stuff in their collection. If they make a precedent of this, other museums in country and elsewhere who have Egyptian stuff they don't want to give back, British Museum, for example, is going to put pressure on Boston to go, don't give it back, because then we'll have to. So now they've made it Sweden's problem. So I don't know. I don't know. Lizzie, why don't you give it back? Is repatriation about mistrust or miscommunication or even status? Honestly, I don't know. Because I obviously feel a certain type of way about institutions, governments, families, communities coming forward and saying, this doesn't belong where you've got it. It belongs with us. And I think I made it clear that I am a proponent of going, yep, I agree. I don't know. I honestly don't know why there is a vigilance against that point of view that feels to me almost cult-like. I don't know if it's bound up in nationalism, a sense of identity, a longing for lost empire, a belief that certain cultures have a moral authority to protect and preserve in this paternalistic, patriarchal fashion. I don't know if it's straight up white supremacy. I honestly don't know what is at the core of it, but I don't think it's healthy for anybody involved. Monsieur Chapeau, the politics of the museum, or the politics of the people funding the museum, the government of the day, the amount of for some reason, the conversations people don't want to have about empire, about exploitation, about slavery, and I get that for some people they're uncomfortable, particularly for people for whom their family's extraordinary wealth and shiny hats have been made possible because of the exploitation of other people's countries and lands. I understand that that's uncomfortable. I get that. But too bad, so sad. There's lots of uncomfortable things. Medusa, Snudpuckle, you heard it mentioned that Egypt thinks their relics all over the world are a form of advertising. And if that is how they feel about it, then repatriation doesn't always mean the physical shifting of an item. I am uncomfortable with the British Museum claiming ownership of Rosetta Stone, etc., etc. It can be there and it can remain there while still being repatriated, because a recognition of appropriate location ownership, or maybe ownership is the wrong word, but maybe we need to take that out of it, like these notions of copyright and ownership, but attribution, national attribution is, because I completely agree that a love of Egyptology and thus a desire to contribute to the tourism of the Egyptian tourist industry is certainly fueled by the things that people see in their museums. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean those items can't remain out of country while still being repatriated. Jessie, this is exactly, yeah. You can return the control of an item to the nation of origin, but make a deal with them to keep the physical item in its current location. Exactly. Exactly. And those deals can be beneficial for both institutions and nations concerned. It creates collaboration. It creates a diversification of the voices that are happening. It's it could certainly involve a sharing of skills, access to various sites. This could work. This could work if we actually see, and I think a lot of it is, if I'm being honest, comes from it's chicken and egg, I suppose, but the academy in which lots of the individuals who are in charge of these collections globally, the academy in which they are trained is not, particularly in the humanities, is not as collaborative as it should and could be. And the insularity of individual academics and the jockeying for, even in kind of co-authored papers, the jockeying for first name billing and authority and autonomy and all of this kind of stuff and name recognition, which is absolutely understandable in a world where the ref and the tef are the be-all and end-all for your career. It creates a world in which sharing is not caring. And so I think that there is a cultural issue at play that spans far beyond the museum, and it's actually at the root of the training model that creates the staff that goes into the museum. And there's a lot of fine talk about collegiality and collaboration, but having been in the academy, in reality, there is precious little of it in a meaningful fashion. Rena, you have to, if you make that deal, you have to be ready for the nation of origin at some point to demand repatriation. Yeah, Yeah, maybe you do. Yeah, maybe you do. And make monarchies is another great question. If is there a problem if something happens to the relic? Who's liable? Who pays for damage? Would the museum rent it from the country of origin? These questions about items on loan. I don't work in museum insurance, so I don't know. I don't know who takes responsibility for curation, upkeep, labeling, insurance. I think it probably, if you're hosting an item, it comes under your insurance. But when it comes to things like examinations, care of the objects, any work that needs to be done on it, I don't know. European court has upheld Italy's right to seize a prize Greek bronze from the Getty Museum. An appeal has been rejected. This prized Greek statue has been seized from the J. Paul Getty Museum in California. Italy has been ruled to be justified in trying to reclaim an important part of its cultural heritage, and they have rejected the museum's appeal. This is the European Court of Human Rights, the ECHR, determined that Italy's decade-long efforts to recover the victorious youth statue from the Malibu-based Getty were not disproportionate. This bronze was pulled from the sea in 1964 by Italian fishermen and then exported out of Italy illegally, purchased by Getty in 1977 for $4 million and has been on display there ever since. The Getty had appealed to the European Court after Italy's High Court of Cassation in 2018 upheld a lower court's confiscation order. The Italian legal rulings were part of the country's years-long campaign to recover antiquities looted from its territories and sold to museums and private collectors around the globe. The Getty has argued it has rights to the statute and that those rights have been violated by Italy's campaign to get it back. The museum has vowed that they are going to continue the legal battle to keep it. The Getty has argued the statue is of Greek origin, was found in international waters, and was never part of Italy's cultural heritage. It has cited a 1968 Court of Cassation ruling that found no evidence the statue ever belonged to Italy. Italy argued, and the Cassation Court later found, that the statue was indeed part of its own cultural heritage, that it was brought to shore by Italians aboard an Italian flag ship and was exported illegally without any customs declarations or payments. Thursday's decision by the Strasbourg, France-based ECHR was a chamber judgment. There's now 3 months for each side to ask that the case be heard in the Grand Chamber. And apparently the Getty is considering this move. If the US court was to enforce the judgment, then it's going to open a huge can of worms for American museums, we are told. However, if Italy had tried to sue the Getty directly in US court, it probably wouldn't have succeeded. Too much time has passed, and there's still been no definitive finding on whether the statue was found to be in Italian waters or international waters. This is a key test under US law for determining ownership. Derek Fincham, who is a researcher in cultural heritage at South Texas College of Law, said the ruling was a big win for Italy and other nations of origin, particularly because the court asserted that states have a, quote, wide margin of appreciation where cultural heritage issues are concerned. The Italian Cassation ruling, we're told, is a pretty good own goal for Getty because they brought the claim and now there's all of this detail that's in English. So this victorious youth has been nicknamed the Getty Bronze. We do love to do that, don't we? Thought to have sunk with a ship carrying it to Italy after the Romans conquered Greece. After being found in the nets of Italian fishermen trawling international waters in 1964, allegedly buried in a cabbage patch. It's an odd baby to find. And then hidden in a priest's bathtub before it was taken out of the country. This is like something out of a Benny Hill film. The EHCR ruling said that Getty's advisors didn't go far enough in ascertaining whether the sellers had acquired and exported it legally from Italy, relying instead on legal opinions from the sellers' lawyers who, quote, had a clear interest in presenting the provenance as legitimate. What a shock. The people selling it to you were like, this is totally legal. And you went, that sounds about right. You're the lawyer and the export. And the fact that you've been paid by the people who are going to make a fortune off of this, totally a coinky dink. Citing the lower court rulings, the ECHR judges determined that the Getty Trust, quote, had a very weighty reason to doubt the statue's legitimate provenance. That said that Getty couldn't expect to be compensated for the statue since it, quote, accepted, at least implicitly, the risk the statue might be confiscated. Italy has successfully won back thousands of artifacts from museums, collections, and private owners around the world that it says were looted or stolen from the country illegally. It recently opened a museum to house them until they can be returned to the regions from where they were looted. Yeah, there's a kind of this is a who stole it first, and the Roman Empire did a lot of looting and a lot of cultural depositing of its own. I have people who disagree with my stance on museumy things have said things like, so when are you sending all the Roman stuff back to Italy? To which my response is, Rome invaded us. We were colonized. When a community comes in and colonizes you, that is, any artifacts that are left in that process are part of your history. They are not looted or misappropriated. They have been deposited by an invading enemy force, in the same way that my language is a Frankenstein creation of Latin, Nordic, French, etc., because we are a nation invaded. We are a nation that has been colonized, settled by various groups across our history. And it's another reason why people talk about, when people talk about the origins of this, of Britain and the heritage and the traditions of Britain and the food of Britain, it's just unspeakably laughable to me, because we have consistently been affected by cultures and communities that have invaded us, but also that have chosen to settle, that have chosen to become part of our community. And when people talk about the Christian tradition, that we have always been a Christian country. No, we weren't, babe. We're pagans. So if we want to talk about the religious heritage of my lands, let's all strip off. Let's dance around the fire in the woods. Like that is my tradition. We were Christianized. We're pagans. Anyway, another rant there. Ranty. But yes, because there's been a lot of discourse about what a British person is, and what they look like specifically, and frankly, a British person, which is also made up because England colonized Cymru and Ireland and Scotland. A British person holds a British passport. It's that simple. It's that simple. A Londoner lives in London. Got keys to a flat or a house in London, you're a Londoner. You might not be a born and bred Londoner, but you're a Londoner. It's that simple. As far as I'm concerned, it's that simple. You're British if you hold a British passport. You're a Londoner, which is what I can speak to. You're a Londoner if you have keys to a house or a flat in London. That's it. That's it. And my husband is currently texting me in Welsh, which I can't translate. I wish I could. But yeah, that's the way I feel about it. And people are free to disagree with me, but they are, of course, wrong. He said, let's go back to speaking Welsh. Why not? Why not? More. US authorities have returned 30 antiquities recovered during trafficking investigations back to Cambodia and Indonesia. Just got some. What have we got? The dance around the maypole, very pagan-y. Have anybody encountered some Morris dancers? Particularly like in Sussex, down in Brighton, when the Morris men and women used to come around, and there was a Morris troupe. I can't remember right now, but they looked like they come out of a swamp, like they were covered in like greeny blacky rags, and they were all painted, and they're covered in bells. You can't tell me that's not akin to some pagan. Of course, it's pagan, and just our love of a bonfire, and especially our love of burning things, peoples, and ideas in effigy is pagan. That is a pagan ritual. You will not convince me otherwise. You will not. Christmas trees, pagan. Easter eggs, pagan. Love it. We love a bit of pagan. We love a bit of pagan. Steve, Welsh is the closest language to the pre-Roman Brythonic tribes of Britain. Yeah. Absolutely. We are fully the Wicker Man, Shane. Fully. Wicker. There are. And also things like those kind of countryside horrors. I went to school near where some of those were filmed. And trust and believe. It is very much the case. Very much the case. Medusa. England is considered a Basque language. More than that, when one of the key things against a Bible in English, they talked about English, and they said this in Latin, obviously, that English is a non-angelic language. We are the Wicker Man. I think that should be on a t-shirt. Just we are the Wicker Man, and people can proudly go around in their pagan Britishness. Just maybe I'll do one with like cutouts for the nipples. Just running around. So we have got these antiquities going back to Cambodia and Indonesia. 27 artifacts have gone to Cambodia, and another 3 have gone to Indonesia. This has been done again. We've got him, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin L. Bragg, DA Bragg. This was announced on the 26th of April. There was a ceremony on the 19th of April when these objects went back to Cambodia, and the artifacts were all recovered as part of ongoing investigations by the DA's office and Homeland Security into international trafficking networks known to trade in antiquities from Southeast Asia. Among the works being returned are pieces linked to the alleged smuggler Sabash Kapoor. We've talked about that individual, and also the convicted trafficker Nancy Weiner. One object, a bronze Shiva triad, was smuggled out of Cambodia in the early 2000s. This was done at Weiner's direction, but when she failed to find a buyer for it, she donated it Tadam, the Denver Art Museum in 2007. It was recovered from the institution by the Antiquities Trafficking Unit of the Manhattan DA's office in June. A stone relief sculpture being returned to India was recovered by authorities from a storage unit owned by Kapoor. For years, we're told these pieces were in the hands of people who saw nothing beyond the profit and status of their illicit possession. HSI New York's Cultural Property, Art and Antiquities Group has worked tirelessly with international partners to take these small steps in seeking justice against some of the world's most prolific traffickers. Hang on a second. This is the same DA Alvin Bragg who's currently prosecuting Donald Trump in New York City. Does this man have time to... Is he okay? Because I talk about him on a bi-weekly basis with something else that's being restituted. He's in virtually every history news that I do. But I feel like that's just a sideline of his operations. Is he okay? Is he... I'm concerned. I'm concerned for DA Bragg. Bragg has a big team. Are they okay? Are they okay? I feel like everyone needs a cookie and a nap. Oh my goodness. He's also got to retry Harvey Weinstein. Everyone needs a nap and a cookie. I mean... So, my husband says, not want to undermine his superhero status. He does have an army of superstars working for him. But, like, still... That's a lot. Wow. So he's the big DA in the office. So it's his office, but he has a bunch of assistant DAs on various areas of law. I don't know who puts together these teams, but whoever is putting together his team, and I assume he's got some part in it, it's like he's Avengers assembled it. Like he's the whoever the boss of the Avengers is. He's the boss of the Avengers. Are they okay? I'm very concerned about them. I'm very concerned about them all. Oh, he's Nick Fury. That's one of the eye patch, isn't it? Does the eye patch? He's Nick Fury. He's Nick Fury. I love that. Right, okay. So in my head, I don't know what DA Bragg looks like. In my head, he is now Samuel L. Jackson in an eye patch and a trench coat. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Wait, Nick Fury's not the boss of the Avengers. Oh, okay. Well, in my head, that is what DA Bragg looks like. Marina points out that the DA's office hires folks to work there on a regular basis. It may also bring in someone outside the office in particular cases. Bragg's team is considered one of the most effective. I am unsurprised by that information. Yeah. So, since 2011, HSI and the Manhattan DA's office have recovered more than 2,500 objects linked to Kapoor and his former gallery on Manhattan's Madison Avenue. So that's just that trafficker. 2,500 objects. Okay. So, no doubt, we'll be talking about DA Bragg. I'm not going to Google what he looks like because I feel like it will spoil it. Because in my head, that's what he looks like now. So that is my last of my repatriations. It's time now to hop on to the new news, friends. Let's do this thing. You can visit the world's largest continuous dinosaur trackway. This is roughly 150 million years ago. A long-necked dinosaur tromped through present-day Colorado. At some point, it decided to change direction, making a wide 270-degree turn as it walked. I'll read it. Yes, no, it won't let you post a picture of Bragg on the chat, or indeed a link to it. And to be honest, I don't want to know what he looks like because I feel like, unless he does in fact have an eye patch at the very least, it will now spoil it for me. Is it? Kiernan says that D.A. Bragg looks a bit like Lawrence Fishburne, only with a beard. So the leather trench coat is correct. So he's in a leather trench coat. He's Morpheus with a beard. I can draw on the eye patch. It's fine. It's fine. Oh, okay. Lawrence Fishburne will do. That will do for me. Also an X. He's very cool. So this trackway has got 134 consecutive footprints. This is the largest continuous dinosaur trackway on the planet found so far. Scarlett, do I need a fan? Possibly. I'm a woman of a certain age. Doesn't take much. Does not take much. Just a strong code of ethics and a leather trench coat, because I'm a child of the Matrix and I like a person with a strong code of ethics. So there you go. So if you've got a rough idea of what my husband's like, not Lawrence Fishburne, but those things, strong code of ethics and a leather trench coat. He has to go leather trench coat. I'm sure he would if I asked him to, though. Anyway, so the United States Forest Service announced that it had purchased 3 parcels of land in Ouray County. Is that how you pronounce that? I apologize if I am wrong, but this is in Colorado. 2 of these parcels, which together total 27 acres, not sure if that's big or small, can't do distances. They encompass the 106 yards of sauropod tracks. This is known as the West Gold Hill Dinosaur Track Sites. These are imprinted in sandstone, roughly 9,300 feet above sea level, which could be high or might not be. I don't know. These fossilized tracks form one of the few known examples of a dinosaur changing direction so significantly. Medusa lives in Denver and has got a fossilized dino poop on a keychain. Coprolite. That took too long. I've played Mary Anning. Fossilized poops. Coprolites. There we go. So this area was bought in 1945 by the Charles family in the hopes that they would be able to discover gold. The kids grew up thinking the strange blob-shaped impressions in the rock at their mining property were just convenient dents holding water, which they were convenient because they could just use them as makeshift dog bowls. In 2022, the family approached the Forest Service and asked if the federal agency would be interested in purchasing the land. The agency used money from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which was created by Congress in 1964 and is funded with oil and gas royalties. Members of the public will be able to access the footprints along the existing Silver Shield Trail, a steep 2-mile route one way that gains about 1,600 feet in elevation from start to finish and is open to hikers and horseback riders. That may be a very difficult walk, or may not be. If you know about hiking, a 2-mile route that gains about 1,600 feet in elevation. Would that be a hard walk? People who know about these things? Not me. These tracks that were previously on private land, visitors could walk the surrounding public trails of the Uncompahgre National Forest. Over time, parts of the tracks became exposed. People took photos and posted them online, but they did not. Oh, okay. Wheezy says that's a climb. Okay. Rena said that would be a hard walk for me, but I'm old. I'm sure it'd be a hard walk for me because I'm lazy. I'm lazy and I live in a city and I don't like nature. I'm afraid of the countryside. So, right, we've got a lot of there's so hardish, it's steep. Aurora says, if it's sandstone, are they at risk of being worn down rapidly if open to people and horses? I mean, local residents likely know about these tracks much earlier, we're told. The family is happy to offer this unique trackway to the US Forest Service, ensuring the land is protected and enjoyed by future generations. So I wonder if certain parts of it will be visible but not walkable on. I don't know how this forestry service does its protective work. I would imagine that you probably aren't going to have loads of, or be happy to have loads of horses clip-clopping over it, or indeed people in like hiking spikes. Is that a thing? I don't know. But yeah, I assume they're going to have to do something to protect it. We will, if anybody gets a chance to go and check this out, could you walk on the tracks? Did you see horses or ponies on the track with people upon them? Medusa, it's entirely possible that I've invented hiking spikes as a concept. It's entirely possible that that does not exist at all. So I might have made that up. Don't quote me on it. So if anybody does go and see this, is it protected? Is it barriered off? Is it under some protective layer? Let us know what you find. Next up, an ancient 30-foot relative of the great white shark has been found in a Mexico quarry. Complete fossils from an enormous shark that lived alongside dinosaurs have apparently revealed crucial information about this enigmatic predator. Am I meaning shoes or poles? I just said hiking spikes because I felt like that might be something that happens. I was winging it. I might have had cleats in mind, but those are for football boots, aren't they? I don't know what I'm talking about. Hiking boots don't come with spikes. It's normal then. Oh, there are hiking spike shoes for extremely steep terrain and ones for ice climbing. I probably have conflated those things. Sometimes I think things might exist in a sport, hiking a sport, maybe, that I don't do. The ice ones are called crampons. I get crampons once a month. So there we go. We're all the same. The tapestry of similarity. These sharks are from the genus Trichodus, first discovered in the mid-18th century. But without the possibility to examine a fully intact specimen, researchers had hotly debated what the shark's body shape might be until now. And now they have this enormous fossil. So this is a complete specimen. One of the most striking enigmas invertebrate paleontology. Researchers have described complete fossils of the shark discovered in limestone quarries in Nuevo Leon, which is in northeastern Mexico. The outline is still fully preserved. Its body shape suggests it hunted sea turtles, which could explain its extinction around 76 million years ago, as it was competing with other animals that ate the same prey. These specimens apparently show an exquisite preservation because the carcasses of the animals were rapidly buried in soft lime mud before being entirely disarticulated. They have revealed this predator belonged to the mackerel shark group, which includes great whites, mako, and salmon sharks. It would have grown to be about 33 feet or 10 meters long. It's got massive grinding teeth, which are unlike those we see in sharks today. So this new information with its grinding dentition is what's led them to believe that they preyed on large ammonites, crustaceans with a hard shell, and sea turtles. This genus of shark had a special ecological niche in the late Cretaceous seas because it was the only pelagic shark that was adapted to eating hard-shell prey such as turtles, which might explain why it died out around 10 million years before the extinction event that ended the Cretaceous period. Quote, towards the end of the Cretaceous, these large sharks were likely in direct competition with some marine reptiles targeting the same prey. So that's very interesting. Pelagic means deep sea. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Talk about Starbucks. Starbuck is the name of my chinchilla. And Starbuck was not named after the coffee shop, but was named after the indomitable Cora Thrace in Battlestar Galactica. So that's the real Starbuck, as far as I'm concerned. There's apparently an 8,000-year-old city at the bottom of the English Channel. Deep sea divers have located it, and the cold waters and strong tides had made it very difficult to explore this location. Yes, the Dessard, I do have a chinchilla. Our chinchilla did have a buddy, but sadly, her teeth, as if you know anything about chinchillas, their teeth are not always friendly to them. And so very sadly, we did have to have her put to sleep. Athena, also named after a Battlestar Galactica character. And we were weighing up whether or not to try and pair bond Starbuck again, but she's a feisty lady. And I don't want to cause more trauma. So, Scarlett, she is livid. She's a livid, angry, rebellious chinchilla. But she is lovely, a lovely little fluffy butt who's plotting all of our demises. I'm sure of it, especially my husband's. Oh, the pelagic zone of the ocean begins at the low tide mark and includes the entire oceanic water column. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So one relic that people have found in this part of the ocean is the remains of an 8,000-year-old civilization in an area called Doggerland. If you ever listen to the shipping forecast, they always mention Doggerland. And I do giggle when they say it, because it just sounds funny. This is a landmass that once connected the British Isles to Europe. The National Geographic went down there in 2019 to find the so-called Lost City. As they went, they found the remains of a tree that had survived underwater for more than 8,000 years. And they went deeper and came across a wooden structure that could have been a dock. The existence of Doggerland was first confirmed in the late 19th century. But it wasn't until about 100 years ago that ships started accidentally unearthing items of archaeological importance. A trawler in 1931 hauled up a lump of peat while fishing, and it contained an antler point, possibly used as a spear, dating from between 10,000 BC and 4,000 BC. Back on the surface, the wooden structure found was described as, quote, a whole platform down there. It's layered, one piece on top of the other, almost like a dock. It's cold and murky, but it's incredible. You know, you descend down this line, and out of the darkness comes the ancient past. It's preserved in a sort of anaerobic, oxygen-free environment. It would have stayed there for many more thousands of years. But recently, the old landscape is eroding away, which is how we found this. The maritime archaeologist said that finding composite structures like this was of, quote, international significance. So something to check out. Hopefully we will see some more news coming out of this. Archaeologists have apparently discovered prehistoric Irish monuments that might have been, quote, roots for the dead. Traces of hundreds of monuments previously unknown have been identified in an archaeological survey in Ireland. 5 of them have been determined to be incredibly rare prehistoric constructions that may once have contained secret roots for the dead leading to the afterlife. LiDAR was used, and this survey was carried out in the Baltinglass landscape of County Wicklow, Ireland. The area examined by the researchers was occupied during the early Neolithic to the middle to late Bronze Age. However, evidence of occupation during a 2,000-year stretch between those periods, it has been scarce until now. The finding of circus monuments or Kirkus monuments is especially noteworthy because it refutes the conventional wisdom that Baltinglass was abandoned for about 2,000 years between the late Bronze Age and early Neolithic. These results suggest that the region was consistently inhabited and had ritual importance during this time. The connection between the Kirkus pathways, the burial grounds, and celestial events underscores an intertwined nature of daily life, agricultural cycles, spiritual beliefs in Neolithic communities. It suggests a complex understanding of life, death, and rebirth. These Kirkuses are a type of monumental Neolithic structure which are similar to ditches or trenches, and they are found in the islands of Great Britain and Ireland. These prehistoric monuments generally have long and relatively narrow earthwork enclosures. The discovery of Kirkus monuments is particularly significant as these are incredibly rare in Ireland. There are less than 20 recorded monuments of this kind in Ireland, typically occurring in isolation or in pairs. This makes the 5 in Baltinglass the largest cluster of these sites in the country. But also, the detailed topographical model of the site and their surrounding landscape provides an opportunity to digitally investigate these monuments in detail. The function of these types of monuments has always been a thorny topic, as we simply don't have enough information. But given that some of the Baltinglass sites can also be linked with burial monuments, this suggests they might have been ceremonial monuments used in burial practices, where these particular monuments mark the physical route in which the dead move from the living into the afterlife. Mimi asks, is this the same as a barrow? And quite honestly, I don't know. Marianne suggests that a barrow is rectangular. Again, I don't know the characteristics that differentiate, if anything does differentiate between these things. I will look into it. And if I find something out, I will share it in the update next time. Great question. A massive 2,200-year-old tomb with a grand interior has been unearthed in China. This has been found in a field in eastern China. There was a large mound covered with grass and trees. When archaeologists began digging, they found a 2,200-year-old tomb filled with treasure. This gigantic burial complex, dubbed Wuwangdun, spans just over 16 million square feet, roughly the size of 280 football fields, triple the size of Vatican City. So it's a big boy. It's surrounded by a moat. It's got 3 main sections: an external cemetery, a central tomb, and a coffin chamber. This complex was built by the ancient Chao state, and dates to the Warring States period. The external cemetery has a large rectangular pit filled with horses and chariots, sacrificial pits, and other structures. In the middle of these structures is the centerpiece of the complex, the 2,200-year-old tomb, shaped almost like an inverted pyramid. After the tomb was built, archaeologists said that soil was heaped on top to create a mound-like shape. Excavations unearthed shovels, tools, spears, arrowheads, and bamboo baskets. At the bottom sits the coffin chamber, a wooden structure with 9 rooms shaped like a plus sign. The photo shows the coffin after excavations, which removed bamboo mats that covered the top. They found almost 1,000 written words on the wooden coffin and walls. The text described the placement of the coffin pieces and the function of the different rooms. Over 1,000 artifacts have so far been uncovered: musical instruments, lacquered wooden items, bronze vessels and utensils, and this is some of what is being photographed and shown here. It's being described as, quote, the largest, highest level and most complex tomb of its kind ever found. What they don't know is who was buried within. The leading theory is that it belonged to an ancient king, King Kaoli, but more research is still needed. The excavations are still ongoing. So as and when we learn more, I will let you know what they find. A different Chinese tomb here. This one's got a name. This is a tomb in a large construction in the shape of the letter A, thought to belong to somebody important, but the owner was a mystery. Some of the artifacts were gone, even some bones and human remains have been stolen. But then researchers found a set of bronze bells with a name on them. The body of the tomb, called M168, had been stolen, but left behind were 15 musical instruments made in bronze. These are Bo and Yong bells buried in the tomb, all of which had the same name inscribed on the front: Zheng Hao Bao. The 2 Bo bells had a longer inscription saying Zheng Hao Bao had chosen this material, the bronze, to create his own bells for eternal life. The bells were ritualistic, not practical according to the release, suggesting that the tomb belonged to a high-level aristocrat. The tomb was dated to between 650 BC and 623 BC. Under the Zhao dynasty, many smaller lordships fought for power in their regions. One of the regions was Zheng State, where the Zheng Gonghui and Zheng Haod were also discovered. The tomb of Zheng Hao Bao joins other Zheng State tombs discovered at the site. The bell also resemble artifacts from the Zhao Qiu culture, suggesting that there was a cultural exchange between these 2 groups more than 2,000 years ago. Bronze bells, yes, Wheezy. Ritual purposes indeed. Absolutely, positively. Off to Rome now, and to 1,700 years ago, a shipwreck in which a unique cargo has been now discovered. This has been found off the coast of Majorca. And in the cargo, researchers have found fish sauce, this will be the garum, and fruit preserves. This sheds light on the commercial trade of the Roman era, an array of materials being ferried throughout the Mediterranean via boat. This is a 40-foot long wreck sitting under 6 feet of water, thought to have sunk in around the 4th century AD, so it's about 1700 years old. The wooden hull is littered with amphora, a slender jar for use for transporting goods. Some of these vessels bore painted inscriptions that stated they contained liquid fish sauce. The residue confirmed this. There were traces of anchovies and sardines. The second type of vessel identified by researchers contained a kind of plant oil. There were evidence of olives as well as residues from wine or other grape derivatives. They also found plant residue from various herbs and vines in the amphora, indicating that this was used to protect the cargo. Amphora, sensible to friction and mechanical breakage, needed some proper packaging. There was a pine cone found in the hole. This might have been used for packaging or perhaps even as a seal for the amphora. Food remains have also been found aboard the other centuries-old shipwrecks in recent years, including an array of spices on that 15th century shipwreck we've talked about that was found near Sweden. So we are starting to see trade goods and what's being passed between places. Staying with Rome, we're talking about garum. Wheezy refers to it as an acquired taste. I believe Max Miller from Tasty History, did he make his own garum? It was certainly something that was, I think, attempted in, oh my goodness, what was it called? It was a TV series with Sue Perkins and Giles Corran. It's on YouTube. And they went back to various periods in history and ate the food. So they were like Romans, Victorians, Tudors, medieval. And I think they attempted to make, and someone tasted garum, and it does sound potent. Oh, apparently Max has made his own garum twice. Didn't he quite like it? I think he referred to it as being like the way he described it. When I watched I've only watched one of the ones he's done on it. I think he talked about it and he made it sound almost like a kind of condiment that you might have, like a soy sauce or something. So garum is a rotted, fermented fish sauce. A little garum goes a long way. Look, we eat all kinds of weird stuff when you think about it logically. Like, logically, a Scotch egg is weird. You've got a boiled egg and you decide to cover it in sausage meat and breadcrumbs. Steve points out that Worcester sauce has anchovies in it, so I don't see a problem. I like an anchovy on a pizza. I know not everybody does, but I also, and this gives my husband the rage, when we go out to a pizza restaurant, it's one of those buffet ones. I'm not going to name it. Many pizza restaurants have buffets, but if you know, you know. When I see a Hawaiian, I would never order a ham and cheese pizza for myself. When I tell you, when I see a Hawaiian pizza in any form of pizza buffet, I'm only eating Hawaiian pizza. I'm only eating Hawaiian pizza. He's already angry. Look, I like an anchovy. I like the salt. I like a pickle. I like an anchovy. I like pineapple on pizza. Rena, and I also know there are lots of Americans who find the notion of our staple jacket potato, either with tuna mayo and cheese or baked beans and cheese. I'm aware that there are plenty of Americans who think that that is vile. And all I'm saying to you is, you've not had it, because jacket potato, it's nectar. nectar. I think I have probably Scotch eggs, mostly because I don't like eggs. If you scotched virtually anything else, I probably would enjoy it because I like a pork pie. I like a pork pie. A jacket potato, Julesy, is a baked potato. They're the same thing. But yes. Look, Rena, I hear you. I hear you. Tuna mayo with cheddar. But the thing is, right, look, here's the deal. When you get your jacket potato out of the oven, where you put it for an hour, and you cut it in across and you squeeze it, and then you need to put in almost the same weight of butter as potato. Like it needs to almost be equal, and not marge, butter. Then grated cheddar, tuna. Yes. Beans on toast also. And look, right, staple from my childhood, Heinz does it. Heinz, beans and sausages in a tin on toast with a bit of grated cheddar or grated mozzarella on toasty. Delish. Delicioso. Yeah. It's good times. So, all sorts of fun things. We're staying with Rome for the next one. Gender non-conforming ancient Romans found refuge in a community dedicated to the goddess, I'm going to pronounce it Cybele. Aurora, do I like Marmite? See, I am the person that proves the advert wrong because I neither love it nor hate it. I probably wouldn't choose it, but I have eaten Marmite on more than one occasion on purpose. If I'm going to put something on toast that's not beans or cheese, then I am putting apricot jam. That's what I'm going for. Lizzie, I've never eaten beans on toast. So, right, okay. The beans that you would have with rice, and also I think, I don't know where you are, Lizzie, but when Americans show me what their baked beans are, beans means Heinz, babe, and that's not what you've got. I don't know what that is. Beans means Heinz. Beans, the musical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. The more you toot, the better you feel. Baked beans for every meal. That's different kettle of fish. Different kettle. You would never put baked beans with rice. That would be foul. Foul. But yes, other beans go with rice. Mexican beans, as we call them, goes with rice. I don't know what America's doing with baked beans. What you call baked beans, we don't call that baked beans. Huh? So yours are in molasses sauce. You know, ours are tomato. Ours are tomato sauce. American baked beans have brown sugar, bacon, and green peppers in it. Yeah, no, you'd put that with rice. Or possibly pudding. Beans. Beans are the way to go. Yeah, our beans are tomatoey. It's a good time all around. So it points out the Vatican Declaration, the infinite dignity, has brought renewed attention to how religions define and interpret gender roles. This is approved by the Pope on the 25th of March 2024. The Vatican Declaration asserts the Vatican's opposition to gender-affirming surgery and surrogacy, While noting that people should not be imprisoned, tortured, or killed because of their sexual orientation, it says that gender theory and any sex change intervention rejected God's plan for human life. By the same logic, so is cancer treatment, plastic surgery, glasses, insulin. Okay. The Catholic Church has long emphasised traditional binary views of gender, but in many places, both present and past, individuals have been able to push back against gender norms. The Catholic Church is all men in frocks, but okay. Even in the ancient Roman Empire, individuals could transgress traditional concepts of gender roles in various ways. While Roman notions of femininity and masculinity were strict regarding clothing, for instance, there is evidence to suggest that individuals could and did breach these norms because, of course, they did, although they were likely to be met with ridicule or scorn. A scholar of Greek and Latin literature, this author says, I have studied Galli, male followers of the goddess Cybele. Their appearance and behaviours was often considered feminine and was commented on extensively by Roman authors. They were said to curl their hair, smooth their legs with pumice stone, and wear fine clothing. They also, but not always, surgically removed their testicles. In the philosophical treatise Hymn to the Mother Gods, Julian the philosopher, the last pagan emperor of the Roman Empire, writes about the history of this cult. In this treatise, he describes the cult's main figures and how some of its rites were performed. Often referred to as the Mother of Gods, Cybele was first worshipped in Anatolia. Her most famous cult site was located at Pesinus, the modern Turkish village of Balihishar, which is about 95 miles southwest of Ankara. This goddess was known in Greece by around 500 BCE and then introduced to Rome by sometime between 205 and 204 BCE, where she became recognized as the mother of the state. Her worship incorporated the official roster of Roman cults, her temple built on the Palatine, the political center of Rome. The cult gave rise to a group of male followers or attendants known as Galli. Among the survival material evidence related to their existence are scriptures, as well as Roman burial of an individual, Gallus, discovered in northern England. Galli were attached to temples where they formed a community. During processions in Cybele's honour, they would follow behind the cult image and priests, chanting alongside musical instruments they played. They could seek alms from the populace in Rome. They would offer prophetic readings or ecstatic dances in return for payment. They may also have enhanced their looks to gain more money. It's been argued by some scholars that their feminine appearance was a way to differentiate themselves from the general public. Likewise, their voluntary castration signalled their renunciation of the world and their devotion to this goddess. However, it does not seem out of the ordinary to think that some Galli were drawn to this cult because it offered them a way to escape the strict gender binaries of the Romans. Galli, unlike other men in Rome or its empire, were able to openly present themselves or live as women, regardless of their assigned sex or how they identified. This author points out it's tempting to see the Galli as non-binary or transgender individuals, even though the Romans did not know or use concepts such as non-binary or transgender. Still, it is not inconceivable that a number of individuals found in the Galli both a community and an identity that allowed them to express themselves in a way that traditional Roman manhood did not permit. The Vatican Declaration asserts that female and male binary is fixed and suggests that gender-affirming care risks threatening the unique dignity of the person has received from the moment of conception. Nonetheless, the existence of trans people today, as well as people who defy gender binaries in the past, including the Galli of ancient Rome, shows that it was possible to live outside of the prevailing gender norms. In my view, it makes it clear that it is unjust to impose moral teachings or judgment on how people experience their bodies or themselves. Just let people live, right? Just let people live. The unique dignity. Well, if that's really the way you feel about the unique dignity and it need to be preserved, I do hope that you are actually working to offer compensation for the countless lives destroyed in the Magdalen laundries, the families stripped apart because of a religious ideology that stated that an unmarried woman was by nature so immoral and unfit to raise their child that regardless of the trauma of ripping those two apart, it was done countless times to the detriment of child and mother, and sometimes to the fatal loss of both because they were so poorly cared for. But yes, please talk to me about human dignity, I beg of you. A mysterious purple lump found at ancient Roman ruins was once worth more than gold. This is found in an ancient Roman site in the United Kingdom. It's turned out to be an incredibly rare substance. This was unearthed in a drain of a 1700-year-old Roman bathhouse on the grounds of Carlisle Cricket Club. Whenever I hear Carlisle, I always think of it was I think it was a Royal Navy advert. I was born in Carlisle, but I was made in the Royal Navy is the tagline to it. Born in Carlisle, but made in the Royal Navy. Catherine, I guess the Pope doesn't believe in brain science or the fact that people who have XXY are the gene combinations. Yeah, I mean, I do wonder about people who, also, if this is something that is determined, this binary is determined, please specify. I beg of you, specify what connotes the binary. And if you're so sure, if it's genetic, then let's have a test. If it's the capacity to bear children, well, then surely the Roman Catholic Church enforcing celibacy on the people who work for it are themselves denying the necessities and rights of what is supposed to be this gender binary. So what is the gender binary if that's the case? But they can't answer that, can they? They can't answer that. Equally, on top of that, what does that mean for people who are intersex? I know it's not a large population, but frankly, nor are trans people. The amount of just insane fear-mongering about less than 1% of the population, people who are vulnerable, who just need to be helped with themselves and then left alone, is just wild to me. So this is this mysterious lump has been sent to a laboratory for further analysis. It is supposed to be a rare lump of Tyrian purple dye, also known as imperial purple. This was the most expensive and sought after colour. It was phenomenally difficult to make because apparently it required thousands of crushed seashells. This lump of purple dye found at the Carlisle Cricket Club is roughly the size of a ping pong ball, the only example we know of in Northern Europe, possibly the only example of a solid sample of the pigment in the form of an unused paint pigment anywhere in the Roman Empire. This purple pigment is mainly preserved in wall paintings and coffins. Excavations on this Roman bathhouse in Carlisle are still ongoing. So, Carlisle, they point out, is a 300-mile drive northwest of London. So, let's see what else they find at this place. DNA analysis spanning 9 generations of people reveals the marriage practices of a mysterious warrior culture. This is cemeteries found in the Great Hungarian Plains. 9 generations of Avars, a mysterious warrior culture dating back nearly 1,500 years. The analysis remains suggests that men stayed put while women married into the culture. And it was common for people to have multiple partners. A study looked at 424 skeletons located in 4 cemeteries. Those results identified 298 people who were closely biologically related and then mapped out family trees across nearly 3 centuries. This community left no written history, their language preserved only as occasional words in contemporaneous Latin and Greek texts. But the new study used software to calculate genetic relatedness from the DNA results. They found that most people related to others in the same cemetery and that women's origins were more diverse than men's, suggesting that women married into a male-centered culture. The suggestion is that Avar or Avar women left their home to join their husband's community, which might have provided some social cohesion between distinct patrilineal clans. This analysis revealed that both men and women commonly had children with more than one partner. It also produced clear evidence for a practice called levirate, which is when closely related men have children with the same woman, often following the death of one of the men. The team found 3 pairs of fathers and sons, 2 pairs of brothers, and an uncle and nephew who each had a shared female partner. By studying specific lineages or patrilines, the team also discovered that in the large Rako-Skilvalva cemetery, there were shifts in genetics, food resources, and grave types in the second half of the 7th century, suggesting a political transition as one patriline took over from another. This community replacement reflects both an archaeological and dietary shift that we discovered within the site itself. This is the study's co-author, but also to a large-scale archaeological transition that occurred throughout the Carpathian Basin. This large-scale ancient DNA analysis in this study has shown the intricacies of these relationships. Quote, the society maintained a detailed memory of its ancestry and knew who its biological relatives were over generations. So somebody's keeping track of that somehow. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Let's see, have a little look at some comments. Aurora, for those of us who are Christians, please don't forget that Paul referred to our bodies as temporary tents. As such, I have chosen to let my fellow folks redecorate as they choose. I love that. I love it. Yeah, I love that. That's fabulous. Mindy, going back to the child sarcophagus, feels that the instability of certain regions in the world, it's not a bad idea to have cultural artifacts that impact the world, spread around the world. I don't necessarily disagree with that either. And I think that there needs to be, I think that the notion of a kind of a modern monuments men of preservation and protection is no bad thing. And I think that also doesn't preclude a recognition of appropriate patrimonial claim, if you will. Julesy, spicy, coming in hot. Find it more interesting that more cultures don't trace lineage through the mother, since that is guaranteed. You are not wrong. You are not wrong. At least for DNA tests, yes. Quite. Excalibur has been found, friends. So call off your search. Spain's Excalibur sword, a 1,000-year-old weapon, has been found buried upright, reflecting the region's rich Islamic history. It's been nicknamed Excalibur after the legendary blade, mostly because it was found upright rather than it being a claim that it's actually Excalibur. It's from the Iberian Peninsula's Islamic period. And it illustrates the region's layered history of subjugation. This sword has a unique design that gives it great archaeological and heritage value. It is quite rusty, but it was found in 1994 north of Valencia. Between 500 and 100 CE, Byzantine, however you want to pronounce it, Visigothic and Arab forces fought for control of the Iberian Peninsula, which is mainly made up of Spain and Portugal. The first centuries of the period saw the Byzantines, I'm going to pronounce it for now, originating in the Middle East, lose the peninsula to the Visigoths of Western Europe. Then, beginning in 711, armies united by the Umayyad dynasty, the Arab Caliphate's first great Muslim regime, brought the peninsula under Islamic rule. These Muslims, also known as the Moors, named their Iberian kingdom Al-Andalus, which becomes Andalusia. This research was part of a broader survey of Valencia's collection of metal objects, which spans from the Roman era to the late medieval period. This is made of iron, it's short, it's about 18 inches long. The hilt is decorated with bronze plate and notches for easy handling. The tip of the blade is slightly curved, creating confusion over the chronology, as Visigothic swords had a similar shape. The age of the artifact has in fact been confirmed by analysing layers of sedimentary earth in which it was buried. Because of its small size and lack of handguard, it's thought that it was used by Andalusian horsemen. It's the only Islamic era sword ever found in Valencia, and it's just one comparable weapon that has been excavated in Spain on the outskirts of Cordoba. Archaeological finds from this period are rare in the country, even rarer in Valencia, due to the characteristic of the city's soil. Thanks to this sword's recent examination, we are told, quote, "We have a new treasure in this Islamic Excalibur and a historical legacy of the ancient Valencia." So, Mimi, no, Moors is certainly not a term that is used currently. It is something that is used to reference a historical control of the landmass. So, particularly when we're talking about Ferdinand and Isabella, that is a designation that's used. Equally, in the plays and the dialogue of the Elizabethan period, it is a designation that is used. However, it is a very baggy designation. Quite what is meant by when Othello, for example, is called a Moor, quite what's meant by that, I think, is much baggier than has been considered. So up next, we have got possibly one of the most red-headed families. Henry VIII would love it. This is a Lavinia Fontana portrait. It's entered a museum collection after 400 years in private hands. This is a family portrait by the pioneering Italian Mannerist painter Lavinia Fontana, and it's now in an American institution. This is from 1604. This portrait we're seeing here is of Bianca degli Ulimacelli and her children from 1604. The Fine Arts Museum of San Francisco has just announced that it's acquired this particular portrait. This is going to be going on public view at the Legion of Honor, according to the museum's director. The work is going to hang alongside masterpieces by El Greco, Titian, Moroni, and Bronzino. It will significantly expand the narrative that visitors encounter in our Renaissance gallery. This is now the oldest work in the museum by a female artist, second only to Marie Guillaume Benoit's famous painting, Psyche Bidding Her Family Farewell from 1791. The portrait subject was in her mid-30s when the work was painted. She's the wife of a nobleman, depicted surrounded by 6 of her children. She'd passed away at the age of 37 in 1605 while delivering her 19th child. The artist, who gave birth to 11 children herself, presented the children on Mathali's left as well-behaved, those on her right as more impish. That's interesting. And also they're kind of holding the birds. One's got a quill. Yes, I hadn't really noticed that, but that's very sweet. Each subject is impeccably dressed, holding a treasure that speaks to their personality. The only sitter identified with her own inscription upon the portrait is the youngest daughter, Virginia, who inherited the work upon her mother's death. She would later marry into the Marchetti family, who passed down over 4 generations, which the museum noted helped protect the canvas and ensure its unusually fine condition. They point out a long line of women has ensured its legacy. Aurora Rose, you thought they were divided by gender, and I can certainly see why. However, on the left, particularly with the 2 smaller children towards the front, they are certainly in dresses, but they could quite clearly be children who are under the age where a boy would be breeched. And what that means is these sort of long curls that you see, these are potentially all children. All of these children could potentially be male. I don't know. One of them is certainly a daughter because she's in it. We've got this Virginia, but it's entirely possible that some of these children in dresses are little boys that just haven't been breeched yet. So, interesting, because you will also see if you look at some portraits of the family, certainly the family of Charles I, when you see his children, there are boys in what we would call dresses. See, part of the haircut, as well as having your hair cut short, you get put in trousers. So there's essentially no differentiation in terms of hair or dress in the early modern period between little boys and girls before the age of, I think, 7. So yes, lovely, but thank goodness for birth control. When I hear 19 children or 11 children, jeez, that's a lot. That's a lot of kids. It's a lot of kids. It's a lot of kids. George Washington. A centuries-old stash of cherries has been found under the Mount Vernon floor. We are told enslaved people picked cherries around 250 years ago in pre-Revolutionary War times. 2 glass bottles filled with centuries-old cherries were found hidden in George Washington's historic home in Virginia. To help preserve the roughly 250-year-old glass bottles, the contents have been decanted. In there, cherries, pit stems, and a gooey residue put into smaller vessels for further analysis. These are whole, recognisable cherries, and apparently smelled like cherry blossoms when they got down to the bottom. It's thought that the amber-coloured liquid could be groundwater that seeped into the bottles as the corks deteriorated. It's thought that the cherries were likely harvested at Mount Vernon in the 1770s, possibly before the Revolutionary Wars, and were squirreled away for future consumption. The bottles themselves were buried sometime between 1758 and 1776. It's been referred to as a time capsule. In colonial times, there was apparently a popular drink called Cherry Bounce, made with brandy, spices, sugar, and cherry juice. Washington and his wife Martha were fans. It was usually apparently stored in larger vessels, so it's thought unlikely that these were used for that, but were rather preserved for other uses like cooking and baking. It's worth noting the cherries weren't picked by Washington himself, but rather by some of the hundreds of enslaved people living at Mount Vernon at the time. The famous tale of young Washington damaging a cherry tree with a hatchet and later confessing to it because I cannot tell a lie is a myth concocted by a biographer. This is not apparently the first time similar vessels containing aging cherries and other fruits have been found in Virginia. In 1966, bottles were unearthed in Williamsburg. In 1981, Some were found at Montecito, which is Thomas Jefferson's estate. Marianne points out that women were often fertile into their early 40s if they had lots of children. I think, as I need to look into this, I'm going to want to work on some female reproductive health videos. I think even later than their early 40s. I think that if you survive childhood and births, there is. I don't see why, although it does seem that Catherine of Aragon's fertility was curtailed earlier, I don't see why there's a cut-off point. There are plenty of women today who aren't entering menopause until their late 40s. Plenty of women. I have to look into it, but I don't see a reason why women in the past would have drastically earlier onsets of peri or actual menopause. So I don't see why it wouldn't be possible for a woman to be having babies well into her 40s. Oh, apologies. Not Montecito, Monticello. Apologies. Monticello, different place. Oh, what was the percentage of women who died in childbirth? I would have to look into that. I will have to look into that. Julesy points out, I'm 55 and still not sure it hasn't happened yet. This is the thing. If you're still menstruating, then you may well. There's no reason to believe you wouldn't still be ovulating, and if you're still ovulating, then you can still very, very well. You can still very, very well get pregnant. Wheezy points out twins are more likely if you're an older mother. That is absolutely the case. Absolutely the case, because but fraternal twins, because ovaries start firing on all cylinders the older you get. So if you've got identical twins, it's the dad's fault. If you've got fraternal twins, it's the mum's fault. so fluffy monkey, women even to their 50s. I see, that's the thing, is I see no reason why menopause would happen earlier in the past. I will look into it, though. I will explore. Jane Austen Museum is appealing to the public to help to decipher Jane Austen's brother's memoir. He has apparently got very tricky handwriting. Scarlett points out, the older you are, the riskier the pregnancy, and your risk increases with each one from the fourth baby on. I mean, no, there is no doubt that there is, the more babies one has, it does go up in risk. However, what I will say is there are people having, as we've seen, 19 babies. So I think, and there are greater risks that happen with age, but certainly there are things where certain conditions, for example, they talk about the risk doubling. In that, the risk goes from 1% to 2%. There is, around maternity care and obstetric care, there is an awful lot of fear-mongering and coercion. Pregnancy at any age and stage with any history can be risky. If a woman has had a C-section, there is an increased risk. If she goes through a VBAC, for example, there is, for example, an increased risk that her uterus may tear or rupture. However, that could also happen to women who are prima gravida, first pregnancy, absolutely no indication of a problem, the uterus can rupture. Things happen. And it may well be that statistically that increased numbers of pregnancies and age does that. However, the samples are statistically pretty small because when women are done, they tend to be done. They tend to be done. So, the head of collections and interpretation engagement at Jane Austen House has pointed out that it's really, really rare to have new Austen family material come to light. It's not fully known what's in there, so that's really exciting. There is an unpublished handwritten biography. The museum's also bought an album of watercolours and drawings that Austen's brother made during his career in the Royal Navy. They've both got on display in an exhibition called Travels with Frank Austen, a name he was known by. Anybody who'd like to help with deciphering this memoir can email the house to request a page of it to transcribe. Reynolds is compared to a citizen science project. Quote, it's generally useful, a really valuable thing to do. Reading it is quite painstaking. The memoir, we're told, has been written in the third person, and the pages towards the end of the book are particularly difficult to read, as arthritis made the author's handwriting go spidery. Both the manuscript biography and watercolour album came up for auction at Bonhams in London last June, and they were acquired by Chowton with funding from the Friends of the National Libraries, a charity that saves the nation's written and printed heritage. I believe we actually talked about that sale in a much earlier video. So if you have a mind to do some deciphering, email them and ask to see a page. Seeing some kind of confirmations about the fear mongering. And it's I think it very much depends on where you give birth, the team that's caring for you, women that I've spoken to, the experience of a very coercive, unpleasant first pregnancy and labour. It's not universal, but it's disproportionately high. Funnily enough, most of them who've gone on to have second babies have talked about it being like night and day. And I wonder if that's because they are more prepared to be the bad guy than they were in their first pregnancy. They are less willing to comply. And I wonder if on some level the care team that are dealing with them when they see a second pregnancy have an expectation they will be less willing to comply, and so they treat them slightly more like a human being from the get-go. Five skeletons have been uncovered under the home of Hermann Goering in Poland. This has been found by amateur archaeologists. 5 human skeletons missing their hands and feet have been found under the home of the Nazi war criminal Hermann Goering's Wolf's Lair military headquarters, which is in present-day Poland. It is believed these are the remains of a family. Discovered as part of a dig at the site near the northeastern town of Kretzin. This is where Nazi leaders spent long stretches of the Second World War. The find is mysterious. The identity of the victims unknown, so the circumstances of their burial, whether the Reich Marshal knew the bones were there while he lived at the house. This article talks about the rise of dark tourism. Fundacja Letterbra is one of the few organisations with explicit permission to conduct archaeological research at the Wolf Lair. The Wolf Lair apparently attracts more than 200,000 visitors a year. A YouTube video documenting the project has been released. The team was apparently, and I think understandably, completely shocked in February to find a skull about 10 centimetres underground. They were looking for the buried wooden flooring of the home, which burned down in 1945. The excavation revealed 5 skeletons, 3 adults, a teenager, and a baby. There were no traces of clothing or personal objects, which means the corpses were probably stripped before they were placed there. It's possible that the bones of the hands and feet had decomposed, but it could not be ruled out that they had in fact been amputated. I don't know if they've determined the date of the deaths or the burials. It's speculated as to whether Goering knew the bodies were buried below his living quarters. They could have been victims of a mass killing, but one that might not have been carried out by the Nazis. Polish prosecutors are investigating. So as and when we get any more information about that, I will pass it on if we hear it. Oh, apparently images from the Met Gala are trickling onto the internet. Oh, okay, right. Well, I'll have to check that out when we close out here. Alicia, as somebody else who had a COVID pregnancy, my 12-week scan was the day before we went into lockdown. You have my sympathy and my empathy, because I think wherever you were, the experience of being pregnant and giving birth in a pandemic was some of the most heinous, traumatizing stuff that could possibly happen. And some days I genuinely think it's a miracle that I'm in even close to being mentally in one piece. And to this day, nearly 4 years on, anytime I'm in a medical setting, my blood pressure is so high, it is deemed to be a medical emergency. And so is my heart rate. Before I go to medical appointments for any reason, I have to take my blood pressure so that I can show them that I don't need an EKG. So yeah. Sympathy and empathy. Apparently the Louvre is considering moving the Mona Lisa to an underground chamber to end public disappointment. This is some fabulous PR. Like, this is a stop moaning about it or we're going to take it away. We've had enough of your whining. The author says, when I took my mother to Paris for her first visit in nearly 5 decades, there was no question we would go to the Louvre. I was more surprised she wanted to stand in the long line to see the Mona Lisa. For the few seconds we would get to take pictures and selfies with the famous painting. The experience is often annoying and disappointing for tourists, with one recent analysis of 18,000 reviews deeming the portrait, quote, the world's most disappointing masterpiece. Da Vinci's iconic image of an almost smiling woman is protected by bulletproof, anti-reflective glass, along with a tightly controlled temperature and humidity to ensure the painting's conservation. To remedy the situation, the Mona Lisa may be moved to an underground chamber. That the artwork might be moved to a dedicated room constructed in the institution's basement. We don't welcome visitors very well in this room, so we don't feel we're doing our job properly. Moving the Mona Lisa to a separate room could put an end to public disappointment. They've been thinking about it for a long time. It's a large room, and the Mona Lisa is at the back behind its security glass. So at first glance, it looks like a postage stamp. The Louvre has 9 million visitors annually. But the painting's popularity has promoted other attempts to improve the viewing experience, including repainting the gallery's walls from an eggshell yellow to a midnight blue in 2019, as well as a shift in the queuing system for visitors. In this day and age, you have to have seen something that everyone's talking about at least once in your life, and the Mona Lisa is clearly one of those must-sees. The underground chamber for the painting will be part of a future Grand Louvre renovation, including a new entrance to the museum. So you'd bypass the glass pyramid and be led directly to the underground rooms, one for the Mona Lisa and others for temporary exhibitions. The mood of the museum is now ripe. We've got to embrace the painting's status as a global icon, which is beyond our control. The overhaul is estimated to cost, it's going to cost about 500 million euros. So we'll see what's going to go on there. I wonder if hyping it up further is the way to go, but we shall see. We shall see. New news, more new news. We have got the gold pocket watch from the Titanic's wealthiest passenger has sold for a record-breaking 1.4 million euros. This auction also included the valise holding the band leader's violin and a pocketbook that documented the Titanic's voyages. This auction took place on Saturday at Henry Aldrich & Son in Devizes, Wiltshire. This was the highest ever amount this watch ever paid for Titanic memorabilia. It belonged to John Jacob Astor IV, a member of the affluent family, the Astor family, and it went for 10 times its expected auction price. Often the case. At the time of sinking, the 47-year-old Astor was one of the richest people on Earth. He owned properties including the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. He was on the Titanic with his 18-year-old newlywed wife, Madeline Astor, and the socialite Molly Brown, the unsinkable Molly Brown. His wife and Brown were thrown onto lifeboats. Astor was told he had to wait until all the women and children were safe before joining. He stepped aside and smoked a cigarette as they were taken to safety. Just last month, the floating door that kept Rose and Jack in the film sold for a whopping $718,750 during a Heritage Auctions Treasures from the Planet Hollywood event. So expensive. Kerry, I wonder if there's any ocean rules to prevent people from excavating personally. When it comes to the Titanic, the ocean is rule itself. It to get down, as the Titan submersible found, it's no easy business getting down to the Titanic. It's what mostly goes down there are cameras, and there are questions about whether that level of investigation, the kind of turbines and things that are moving those vehicles around, is causing damage to the site. So yes, the ocean gets in the way. That is my final piece of new news. We are now going on to my ding-dongs. I've left my ding-dong bell. So imagine I'm holding my little weeing boy, ding-a-ling-a-linging, ding-a-ling-a-linging. Right. When I first read this, I was like, my goodness, it's not enough that the Georgians are fighting father and son all the time. It's not enough that the Georgians are, building the Brighton Pavilion and being all Hanoverian all over the place. They've also got to be going around all over Europe stealing library books. And then I realised they probably aren't talking about the Hanoverian dynasty. You fool. They aren't. This is Georgia, the place. Police arrested 9 Georgians suspected of running a sophisticated criminal operation, stealing valuable books, including an original Alexander Pushkin manuscript from national libraries across Europe. Shelves of 19th century Russian language literature had been ransacked over 2 years across several countries, replaced with fakes, according to Europol. The University of Warsaw was among the targets, and they they reported to the theft of first editions by Pushkin and Nikolai Gogol. So in reading rooms, they would, quote, meticulously measure the books and take photographs before handing them back. This allows them to swap them for near perfect copies. Sometimes they relied on a more crude approach, staking out collections, deciding what was of interest, breaking in, and then stealing the books. This criminal group is believed to be responsible for the theft of at least 170 books, causing financial damages amounting to 2.5 million euros. Some of the artifacts have been sold via auction in St. Petersburg and Moscow. The 4 suspects were arrested in Georgia on Wednesday. Another 3 individuals were detained earlier in Estonia, France, and Lithuania. Another 2 Georgian nationals have been under judicial supervision in France since being apprehended at a Brussels airport in November 2023. This international operation came about after French authorities notified Europol about losses to their libraries. Europol said that they believed the gang was responsible for the theft of at least 170 books. As part of the operation, police seized more than 150 books. The provenance of which they are still assessing. The books were sold in 2022 and 2023 from national historic libraries in France, Germany, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and Switzerland. Though Georgia is not in the EU, Europol was able to work with Georgian authorities to locate several members of this organised criminal gang. Herculaneum, a former diplomat, an expert in Russia policy, and professor at the University of Warsaw, told the AFP last year that the theft of the Pushkin and Gogol books was, quote, like gouging out the crown jewels. Further to this, another theft. A trailer full of World War II artifacts stolen from a Colorado's 10th Mountain Division history group. A trailer filled with World War II artifacts and equipment was stolen from a Highlands Ranch-based Colorado history group. Only about 100 of the 1,500 men who served in the 10th Mountain Division of World War II are still alive today. Now that memory has been taken. A piece of history has been lost. Backpacks, parkas, and skis. That's what's left of a chapter in Colorado history so rich that a small group is dedicated to its preservation. These skis were state-of-the-art 80 years ago, we're told, indicating a pair of these wooden skis. Unfortunately, one of our members had taken the trailer to his personal home in Englewood. Someone rolled up about 1 o'clock in the morning, cut the locks on the trailer, hitched it up, and they were gone in about 5 minutes or less. So tent, net, tables, signage, and other items from Camp Hale. They were not insured, but they came to about $30,000 in value. However, their true worth is priceless. The group is now struggling to put on upcoming events like Memorial Day in Leadville, where they honour fallen soldiers. These artifacts would have been used for the exhibits to honour the people, the soldiers that didn't come home. The fundraising online helps to make up the loss, and begging the thieves to return the stolen history. They are stolen from the people of Colorado, from the people of the United States. It's stealing from the world. They want it back. I don't know if these photographs are any help, but if anybody thinks they know something, people in the Denver metro area, keep an eye out for what looks like a pile of old green military canvas. Police are investigating and ask anyone with information on the theft to contact them so people might be able to help. If Share it around, friends. If anybody knows anything, let's see if we can get this stuff returned. I hope. Yeah, Wheezy points out they probably wanted to trail and don't money the history, which probably means what they're going to do with the history. Not preserve it, not keep it. Best case scenario, they chuck it somewhere where it's warm and dry and preserved. Worst case scenario, it's landfill. Oh, actually, worst case scenario, it's a bonfire. The FBI have looked into thrill-seeking teachers thought to be global art thieves. They are referred to as a nondescript middle-aged couple who hung a stolen $150 million Wilhelm de Kooning painting behind their bedroom door in New Mexico. This is Jerry and Rita Alter, a pair of New Mexico teachers who somehow funded a life of travel and adventure to the point that they are suspected of being international art thieves. The couple have now died. They are believed to have conducted a series of art heists in the mid-1980s. One of which, the couple walked into a Tucson, Arizona museum and stole the de Kooning using a deceptive method. The woman distracted staff with questions while the man in a fake moustache lifted the painting off the wall, put it under his coat and walked out. This is Pink Panther levels of criminality. Fabulous. The heist of Woman Ochre was never decisively pinned on the altars, but the painting was discovered in 2017 after Rita died, and it now hangs back in Tucson. Crazy artist lady says, pay teachers better. They're finding a way to fund themselves. I don't think they're buying copy decks and pens for their classroom with this kind of money. They had a travel agent. They were adrenaline junkies who love to fly to one country and then pay smugglers to secrete them to another. That's perverts. That's a thrill thing. This is a kink thing. The second theft involves two stolen Towers Society artist painting, Victor Higgins Aspen's and Joseph Henry Sharp's Indian Boy in Full Dress from the Harwood Museum of Art in Taos, New Mexico, which happened in March 1985. A film starring Zendaya. Oh, delish. Love that. That would be good, actually. A woman in a wheelchair distracted the museum attendant by asking questions about the elevator, while a man in a long black coat, not wearing a fake moustache in this instance, went upstairs to the second floor when the paintings were hanging. So he's there. He can make as much noise as he wants. When he's done with the commotion up there, then they hear him run down the stairs. So Harwood's executive director, Juniper Larisis, told the newspapers that she thinks that these pieces were bought unwittingly. Quote, I don't know if they've since been sold from that buyer, but likely someone purchased and has been living with them for many years. Hopefully they recognise that they belong to the Harwood and give them back. Taos rhymes with mouse. Fabulous. Fabulous. So if anybody has some art that you bought from some well-meaning New Mexico teachers, I suggest you have a conversation about it. Gads. So, events and exhibitions. This one at the J. Paul Getty Museum, the Getty Center. This is very interesting. Blood, Medieval, Modern. Blood has fascinated and repelled generations of artists and viewers. Medieval manuscripts testify to a rich visual culture surrounding blood, devotional, medical, genealogical, as well as evidence of violence. By examining the meanings of medieval blood, this exhibition extends to intersecting contemporary conversations. Artists have used the potent visual connotations of blood to explore issues of feminism, HIV and AIDS, and the science of DNA. Medieval and modern approaches to the representation of blood offer instances of both connection and rupture across time. I think it sounds very interesting. So if you are in LA, between now and the 19th of May, so you've not got long left to go and check this out. Tell me what you think if you see it. As always, on this one, we have got linked in the description box the accessibility information for the Getty Centre. So if you need that, then please do check it out. It's linked in the description box. Last but by no means least, we've got a TV show coming out. I don't know what date it's going to come to you. It says here May 1st on Hulu. If you haven't got Hulu, I don't know when it's going to come to you. But we have got Shard Lake. We have got this is so Tom Cromwell is a character played by Sean Bean here. And this is the person who is pictured is Matthew Shardlake, the eponymous. This is a Tudor murder mystery detective series. And Matthew Shardlake is investigating this. And these are the Shardlake Chronicles. The individual playing Shardlake, I had the very great privilege of seeing him live at the RSC in Stratford-upon-Avon playing Richard III. And he was phenomenal. So I think this is going to be a fabulous show. Once again, Sean Bean is playing a leading character who, if you've read the books, the history books, you know comes to a sticky decapitation end. When you found yourself a niche, Sean, stick to the niche. But I think this is going to be really interesting. I also believe, sadly, the author of the Shardlake novels passed away last week, or it was announced last week. So before seeing this come to life, I suppose. But yes, if I say this, I have a list of so many shows to watch, but this does it really good. So that's what I have for you for today. Let me know what you think. As per usual, please do. If you find articles, send them my way. I hope you have enjoyed this history news. If you have been watching live, thank you so much. If you are watching the playback, thank you for your time. We all have business to attend to, I'm sure. That is the Met Gala. What is going on? We've got some catching up to do over there. Thank you for spending this time with me. And if you do like what you see, please do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please hit the bell icon, select all of the drop down that will appear. That will notify you. YouTube claims they'll notify you when I've uploaded, when I'm going live. I do also, if you go to my website, it's www.katrinamarchant.com, and you go to the contact page. If you put your email address in the little email box, that will put you on my list. So I can send you out emails once a week where I'll tell you what I've been up to. And I'll also send you any links that you might need for that. My husband just sent me a picture, which is ominous. What's the picture of? Let's discover. It's all of the way Sean Bean has died in his TV shows. He's just sent me a meme of all the ways Sean Bean dies in it. So please do sign up for my mailing list, and I will send you information and things like that. Please like this video and like my other videos as well. Please share the channel and the content with your pals. And I will be back in a premiere on Friday. Hope to see you in the chat there. I hope you're going to enjoy Friday's video. And in 2 weeks, we will be back with another History News Live. But until then, I hope you're going to have a lovely Monday, if it's still Monday for you, or whatever day of the week. I hope the rest of your day goes well. And indeed, the rest of your week goes well. I hope that we have better weather here. I hope everyone has better weather. This sounds like there's some high winds going on. I hope you're going to take care of yourselves, behave yourselves, and if you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, don't get caught. And I will see you all in my next video. But for now, do take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.